Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and I'm going to read way too much into Rise of the Guardians per request from I Am the Game Boy. So, if you have a request from me to read way too much into a movie, leave that in the comments and I will do my very best to get that on the schedule. This worked out nice because I'm doing Christmas movies and things like that, so I thought this fit as a nice Christmas movie. Even though technically this movie takes place at Easter time. But Santa Claus is in it, so that's Christmassy enough for me. And it was a really interesting movie, and I've seen this movie twice now. I watched it once a while back, and then I watched it again to do this video. And both times I've watched this movie, watching it the second time, I forgot how much I enjoyed this movie the first time. Yeah, it's a little hokey. It's a little corny. I mean, the villain is literally the boogeyman. This movie has just so many layers of goodness to it. It is fun, it is funny, but it deals with like issues of faith and belief and what you put your trust in, and it is such a deep movie. I mean, the first thing that this movie establishes is that the man on the moon reaches out and selects these guardians. Like, the man on the moon sees into their hearts and sees their center and sees what they really are and what is really there, and selects people to be part of the Guardians. And when he selected Jack, what's interesting is, according to most of those Guardians, Jack was the least qualified. So the moon actually, as we get into this movie here, 300 years into Jack's life, selected Jack to be a Guardian, one of the least qualified. So in other words, it wasn't all about Jack and all his special abilities and powers. The moon selected him, and that was that. You know, Santa, or North as he's called in this movie, was okay with that. The Easter Bunny kind of fought it. Jack kind of fought it. But it's interesting. I don't know. There's so many things I could get into. Like, they are guardians of children. They're guardians of their joys, their wonder, their innocence. They're guardians of all these things. And yet, all these guys get so busy with their holidays that they forget to actually spend time with children and get to know children. Where Jack's the guy who, you know, has fun and plays with them. But what I'm going to read into in this movie is that whole thing about belief. I mean, first off, on this very basic level with Jack and the moon, that the first thing Jack remembers is waking up in ice cold water and forgetting his entire past, but knowing that his name is Jack Frost because the moon told him. And he wonders, 300 years, why did the moon put him in this world? Why did the moon give him these powers? Why is he even here, for crying out loud? What does he have to offer? Children don't believe in him. They don't see him. And so it's like, why am I here? Can we relate to that question at all? Can we relate to those feelings? I know I've definitely had those moments. There's even a moment where he's on the roof of a house and he's talking to the moon and he's like, why am I here? Does the moon answer? No. Can we relate to that? Can I relate to that in my own relationship with God, saying, why am I here, and feeling like no answer is coming? What was interesting about that scene is one scene before, we saw the moon talking to the Guardians, revealing to them that Jack was to be the next Guardian. So even in that scene where Jack is talking to the moon and he wants an answer, but it's so silent, and that silence, it just feels like it kills him. Yet what he doesn't understand is the moon is already working on his behalf. The moon already has a calling on his life. The moon is already doing things that he's not seeing. And it's just, that was such an interesting scene. Then we actually meet the boogeyman. And you know what's interesting about the boogeyman? He's actually rebelling against the moon. I mean, one of his first scenes, he sends up a challenge to the moon. Can your guardians really stop me this time? I mean, it feels like, even though, yes, he's railing against the Guardian, and he wants all the children to believe in him, it's a rebellion against the moon. And the children are just the weapon. So by hurting them, he's gonna go up and hurt the moon. I mean, that's like, that was also a very interesting thing to read into as I'm watching this. So here's the biggest thing I think I ended up reading into this movie, is that fear is a belief. Fear is believing in the worst possible outcome instead of the best, which is what faith is, believing in the best. So fear really is faith, but it's faith working backwards in the complete wrong direction. And that is what the boogeyman wanted. The boogeyman wanted children to believe in him. He wanted the children to have belief, not a lack of belief. He wanted them to believe. He wanted them to not believe in the moon, to not believe in the Guardians, to not believe in wonder, hope, joy, fun. He didn't want them to believe in that. He wanted them to believe in him. And in that way, he would rule their hearts and he would have his place back in the world. And what the whole movie was about, it was even one child believing, like Jamie did at the end of the movie, that if one child could believe, that's like light into the world. And that's, I couldn't even get over it. And it so much reminds me of the fact that there is a devil. There is a devil who wants people to believe in him and wants people to be in fear believing in the worst possible outcome to be believing in him. Kind of like the boogeyman, he wanted God's throne, he wanted to sit up there and be ruler over everything, and he wanted all belief to be towards him. And we are just kind of the weapons to hurt God, as that's his whole rebellion. And so I just thought that was a very interesting concept to see that played out in this movie. And the way to fight that is to believe the right things, to believe in love, to believe God, to believe Jesus, to believe in the light and let the light in. And the light defeats it every time. The moment light gets in there, dark doesn't even stand the least bit of chance. And so I'm watching this movie and I'm amazed at that. Even those times where we feel like we're asking God, what am I doing with my life? Why am I even here? And he's silent. Kind of like with Jack Frost. God is still somewhere in the background moving. God is still working. God is answering. Perhaps not the ways we thought, but he's working. He's answering. And that's what I really liked about this movie. This movie to me became a picture of belief. Believing even when it's hard, believing even when you can't see, believing, knowing that God is working in your life. And that's what I felt like when I watched this. What an amazing picture of faith, what an amazing picture of belief, and what an amazing picture of the enemy and how the enemy works, and what an amazing picture of how God is already working even when it feels like he's silent. He's not. He's working. And so I just thought on all those levels, this movie really worked for me, on top of the fact that it was really fun, it was adventurous, and it had a really good story. So if you saw Rise of the Guardians, what did you think of this movie? Make sure to let me know in the comments, and while you're there, hit the subscribe button and become a Durbanian. Be on top of the new videos coming out here on Durbania. Like, next week, I'm going to be reading way too much into Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, but not me alone. I'm going to be doing it with Sean Chandler of the channel Sean Chandler Talks About. So if you've never seen his channel, Sean Chandler Talks About, I highly recommend right now, as soon as this video finishes, go check it out, give him a subscription, say Durbin sent you, and check out his stuff. He's got a great channel and he loves talking about movies with you. So check out Sean Chandler and look for him next week here on Durbania. I'm Durbin. Thank you so much for checking out Durbania.